Number 10. The Joker. While the Joker is admittedly just a man, he obviously needs to at least make the cut because, you know, Batman is also just a man, but a powerful one. And while Joker has no superpowers to speak of, unless maybe we count his insanity, or his 100% sanity, depending on what you're reading, but even without any true superpowers of his own, the Joker is still the perfect foil for the extraordinary man that is Bruce Wayne and Batman. If there is anyone who has taken Batman close to the precipice when it comes to losing himself to the darkness within, it is the Joker. Batman has been tormented on countless occasions by the Joker, and the Joker has succeeded in his plans to do so multiple times, usually in ways that hurt Batman through doing harm to those he cares for, such as when he brainwashed Tim Drake, shot and paralyzed Barbara Gordon, or when he killed Jason Todd. Number 9. Hush. While Hush might not be a villain who gets many wins, he's still one of the most passionate when it comes to his desire to completely obliterate Batman, and it's for that reason that Hush makes our cut. Hush is Thomas Elliot, one of Bruce Wayne's childhood friends, hell-bent on destroying him in adulthood due to his jealousy. Hush doesn't just have that personal connection with Bruce to give him an edge in comparison, he's also managed to manipulate other villains besides, using them as pawns in his own sinister plans to take down Batman and literally proving himself better than them as shown in the War Games storyline. And before we move on to the next number, if you are enjoying this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out, my friends, and thank you for those who have already done so. Number 8. Talon. There have been more than a few villains who have held the mantle of Talon, among them one of the deadliest being William Cobb. The Talons are the assassins of the Court of Owls who can regenerate and reawaken after years of slumber, seemingly returning from the dead. William Cobb is one of the most seemingly successful among their ranks. He is revealed to be the great-grandfather of Dick Grayson, Nightwing, and to have been responsible, apparently, for the deaths of multiple members of the Wayne family throughout the years.
Number 7, we have Johnny Karaoke. The crooning Yakuza loan shark is the next on our list today. Definitely not the most fearsome of Batman foes, however, this villain is way too interesting to stay buried for too long. After all, you've got to respect any American fearsome enough to rise through the ranks of the Yakuza. Although he seems like a very happy-go-lucky kind of guy, this is all an act because once you let your guard down around him, he'll whip out his cane that doubles as a microphone and a sword and do whatever he feels is necessary to protect himself and his geisha girls. Though he hasn't really made any appearances outside of his first appearance in 2007's Batman number 660, the character Jonathan John Charisma Brown from Batman Arkham Knight is heavily influenced by him and likely an homage to the smooth-talking Elvis impersonator. Like many lesser-known Batman villains, Johnny does not possess any powers other than the ability to sing pretty well, but his connection to the Yakuza combined with his own skills makes him a fairly dangerous foe.
Number 6. Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight was a villain who posed a pretty huge threat to Batman in the Batman Arkham Knight 2015 video game. He was a frightening foe who had the wits and wealth to get his hands on and reverse engineer many of Batman's gadgets, to essentially put himself on the same level of power as Batman. In the end, the reveal for this character was somewhat disappointing as we learned that Arkham Knight was actually Bruce's former ward and sidekick, dun dun dun, Jason Todd. Jason ended up abandoning his plot to get revenge on Batman, but if he hadn't, he likely would have destroyed both Batman and Gotham in his role as the Arkham Knight.
Number 5. Zombie. Best known as an associate of Bane, Zombie was actually a pretty big reason behind Bane being able to become one of Gotham's best known criminals. He was once an assistant at the medical facility that gave Bane his abilities, and he then aided Bane in escaping prison, and was the one who found a way for Bane to get his daily dose of venom. Shortly after Bird's encounter with Batman, Bane defeated the Dark Knight and his rise to power started. Bird, Trog, and Zombie started a rampage over the city to eliminate competition and recruit more members to Bane's crime empire, as they were commanded by their boss, of course. Bird, Trog, and Zombie were sent by Bane to verify the supposed threat of a new Batman, and the three of them were brutally defeated by the new Dark Knight. They were arrested and locked away by the police, and each of them were interrogated about Bane's activities, but none of them revealed anything because they are good henchmen. They did eventually break out of prison, but it didn't take too long for them to end up back there. Check out Zombie in his first appearance in 1993's Batman Vengeance of Bane, number 1.
Number 4. Deathstroke. Deathstroke is one of the most powerful villains for any hero that he comes up against. Slade Wilson is one of the deadliest assassins in the entire DC universe, and when he comes up against Batman, you can bet he'd kill him if contracted to. Deathstroke most recently took out Batman in a fight near the beginning of the Joker War story arc. He left Batman for dead, and Batman was almost wiped out as a result of his attack when combined with confronting the Joker. And let's not forget that Deathstroke wasn't even contracted to kill Batman here, so this wasn't even Slade at his most willpower beautiful or powerful. He was holding back in that fight. His only aim there was to basically put Batman out of commission for a short while.
Number 3. The Ventriloquist. Since his debut in Detective Comics number 583, 3 versions of the Ventriloquist have perplexed audiences. These versions being Arnold Wesker, Peyton Riley, and New 52's Shauna Belzer, but let's focus on Wesker as he is the best known of the 3. Because of his multiple personality disorder, Wesker uses a ventriloquist dummy to commit mob-related crimes. This doll, famously named Scarface for his Al Capone-like appearance, controls Wesker and the crime business they run. If Scarface isn't present, then Wesker projects an identity onto another inanimate object, usually sock puppets or anything else that he can use as a puppet. First appearing in 1988's Detective Comics number 583, we've seen Wesker as a member of the Secret Society of Supervillains, the Black Lantern Corps, and even the Justice League of Arkham, with all the stories and battles leading up to his tragic death in 2006's Detective Comics number 818. A year after surviving Luthor's attempt to recreate the multiverse, we see the Great White Shark burst into Wesker's apartment and kill him with a single shot to the head. Man, it's such a sad way to go for such a good villain.
Number 2. Poison Ivy. Ivy is usually one that gets dismissed when it comes to Batman's most powerful villains, but let's not forget that she can control plants the world over, meaning in essence, she can take control of the world pretty much whenever she wants. During Tom King's run, we saw Ivy get her moment in the spotlight, proving just how dangerous she could be when she decided to take over the entire world and every person on it through plants. Ivy controls the beings of planet Earth, including powerful superheroes like Superman, through veggies that they have consumed as well. Eventually, Batman and Catwoman find a way to get through to Ivy, but this was also during a phase where Poison Ivy was basically slowly transitioning into a reluctant hero role. Imagine if Ivy had really been full out supervillain at the time, and if Batman didn't have Harley Quinn to help him get through to Pam. Number 1. Emperor Joker. You didn't really think I was gonna let Joker rest so low on this list, did you now? Granted, this point could also technically be combined with Superman villain known as Mr. Mixia's Pitlick, who gave Emperor Joker his powers during that story arc. However, Mr. Mixie isn't really a Batman villain, but Joker is, and when he tricked Mr. Mixie into giving him 99.99% of his power, he ended up becoming one of the most powerful villains ever to take on Batman. In fact, after the events of torturing Batman in his newly reconstructed version of reality, Batman was left a broken man when everything was reverted back to normal afterward, completely traumatized by the experience. Superman literally had to take Batman's memories of this event in order to fix him and make him well enough once more to resume his heroic duties.
Number 10. Mr. Bloom. The concept of darkness is one that is intrinsically tied to Batman. I mean, everyone should come to expect it from a character referred to as the Dark Knight. So it only makes sense to put the character up against the opposite of darkness, light, and that is where Mr. Bloom comes to play. His past, as well as his motives, remain a mystery to this day, but in no way does that mean he didn't leave a huge impact on Gotham City. With the ability to bestow powers onto any other human being at the cost of shortening that individual's life, Mr. Bloom provided these quote-unquote seeds to a select few, and crime blossomed and grew like a weed from the lowest reaches of Gotham City. Not only could he bestow powers onto others through his seeds though, he also had some powers of his own, including mechakinesis, pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, science alteration, and of course, superhuman strength and agility. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2015's Batman Volume 2, all the way until his death in 2016's Batman Volume 2, number 50. Number 9. Black Spider. When Eric Needham was a young lad, he unfortunately became addicted to drugs and turned to a life of crime in order to fuel that addiction. He raided and robbed his father's liquor store and actually killed his old man in the process, which landed him in jail where he kicked that nasty drug habit and took up a life of fighting the war on drugs. Donning a costume, he became a self-styled vigilante and began killing those suspected of dealing any sort of drugs. Now in his mind, Batman and him had a common enemy and they should have been allies, but the Dark Knight thought differently due to Needham's tendency to, kill. Batman interfered with his plans many times, and that led to Needham turning to a life of crime instead, teaming up with some of the other villains in order to get revenge on Batman. During his crusade, Needham's wife and son were killed by a drug lord who had discovered the Black Spider's identity, and in a rage, the Spider prepared for one final assault. After being shot multiple times, Needham invaded the drug lord's headquarters and detonated explosives strapped to his back, killing the drug dealers in the process. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1976's Detective Comics number 463. Number 8. The Black and White Bandit. Once a successful artist, Roscoe Chiara was commissioned to paint a portrait of Windsor Munzel, the head of a chemical corporation. His company had created some new pigments specifically for painting, however Chiara did not know that the paints were untested, and began to have these serious headaches. On the final end of painting, Chiara fell asleep and awoke to a colorless sunrise, because he had gone completely colorblind as a result of the pigments. To get his revenge, he became the Black and White Bandit and began a campaign against Munzel, stealing various pieces of art from his collection and his museum. He doesn't have any powers per se, but he is a master of disguise, as he has been seen as a blind man and a nun, and he is also a getaway master thanks to his zebra. It didn't take long for Batman to catch wind of what was going on, and after 2 encounters, he defeated the Black and White Bandit with only a false advertisement and just a punch to the nose. He hasn't really been seen since, but it's presumed that he is reformed or he's either still in jail. We're not 100% sure. Check him out in 2001's Batman Gotham Knights, number 12.
Number 7. The Penguin. The Penguin is not just known as the odd man out in his own origins, but also seems to often be the odd man out here at Top 10 Nerd when it comes to our lists, which is why I thought it was so important to include him here. The Penguin is one of the Batman's oldest villains who has managed to stick around and resurface throughout the years. While he's usually remained more of a supporting criminal role when it comes to more recent Batman history, the Penguin, aka Oswald Cobblepot, has also remained one of Batman's most wealthy foes who uses his money to wreak havoc and create limitless gadgets and weapons, similar to Bruce Wayne himself. It's both his wealth and his knowledge of the criminal underground that make him such a powerful opponent. His ability to manipulate the criminal underworld of Gotham and bend it to his will while also remaining a public figure takes a different kind of strength. Honestly, I would love to see someone like the Penguin return to the spotlight once more as one of Batman's top villains.
Number 6. Merrymaker. Dr. Byron Meredith was a crazed doctor that worked at Arkham Asylum who used pretty interesting methods to treat and rehabilitate his patients, his favorite being torture. Byron was one of the few doctors who could actually tolerate the Joker, and he ended up becoming obsessed with him and just studied him endlessly until he was fired and went into a solo practice. Eventually creating the costume for the Merrymaker, Meredith created that role so that he could lead his 4 new Joker-obsessed patients into a life of crime. Meredith's plan was to create this uncanny society so that the 4 would do his bidding. While the Joker-themed criminals attacked civilians, Meredith would sneak into a nearby building where one of his enemies, either his ex-wife, her lawyer, etc. would be, and this way he could easily perform a kill, while the members of the League of Smiles would attract Batman and the GCPD's attention. Check the Merrymaker and the League of Smiles out for yourself in 2013's Detective Comics Volume 2, number 16. Number 5. Maxie Zeus. Chronologically the 4th Batman villain to be committed to Arkham Asylum behind the Joker, Two-Face, and Rupert Thorne, Maximilian started out with pretty humble beginnings as a Greek history teacher. After his wife dies from unrevealed circumstances, Zeus loses his sanity and becomes a crime lord, using his intelligence and resources to rise to power in Gotham's underworld. Upon his very first murder though, he is thwarted by Batman and committed to Arkham Asylum, where he escaped from many times, one of which Batman actually let slide, as it was so he could go wish his daughter happy birthday. With each escape leading him to lose more and more of his sanity, Zeus eventually gets to a point where he joins forces with the children of Ares, Deimos, Phobos, and Eris, to help merge Gotham City with Ares' throne capital, the Areopagus. Maxie is actually killed as a result of this whole plot, and his sacrifice is what brings the return of Ares, who is thankfully stopped by Wonder Woman. Funnily enough, it's actually revealed about a year later that Maxie is alive and well and running an illegal casino that eventually gets shut down thanks to a tip from the boy Wonder, and Maxie is sent back to jail without any struggle. You've probably guessed it, but this guy doesn't have any powers either. Basically, his knowledge as a history teacher and his ability to lead got him as far as possible, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Check him out in his first appearance in 1979's Detective Comics number 483. Number 4. Mr. Camera. Called Mr. Camera for obvious reasons because of the camera lens helmet he used to wear on his crimes, and also because he employed all sorts of photographic devices on his criminal raids. Used to record his crimes, and on one very special day, he actually managed to get some footage of Batman and Robin in their secret identities. Although he was captured that same day because, Batman and Robin really didn't want that information to get out, he did manage to hide the tape, hoping to use it eventually against the dynamic duo. Not too long after, Batman and Robin found the tape and discovered that the footage was actually too obscure to even see anything, which meant that their secret had never actually been exposed and that they had nothing to worry about at all. This particular version of Mr. Camera was unfortunately erased from the DC Comics history after Crisis on Infinite Earths, but there have been some one-off appearances in recent years of this character. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1954's Batman number 81.
Number 3. Bane. If we are talking about physical power, then it's gotta be Bane, and perhaps even mental power too. While the Harley Quinn animated series gives us a version of Bane who is not quite as bright and is kind of a lovable oaf, in the comics, Bane is also known for being a genius in addition to his physical prowess. Bane grew up in prison and used most of his time to get fit and study at the prison library as much as he could. When we think of Bane, we usually think of the man who literally took Batman out of commission for quite a while in the comics when he broke his back over his knee during Nightfall, prompting Batman to recruit Azrael John Paul Valley to take over for him in his absence.
Number 2. Johnny Stitches. A Gotham City underboss for the Intergang, Johnny Donetto worked for Tobias Wales until he was caught stealing from him and was subjected to some pretty serious torture and mutilation, and just straight up thrown out of a window to die in an alley. Thankfully, he was found by Bruno Mannheim, who thought that Johnny had some potential, and he had Desaad fix him and stitch him up as best he could. Now operating under the name Johnny Stitches, he worked aggressively to remove the remaining large criminals in Gotham after the deportations of all supervillains from Earth. With his newfound power over people, Stitches used the Iceberg Lounge as a meeting place for Intergang and would eventually cause Penguin some pretty big trouble with the various vigilantes of the city. After Batman's sudden disappearance, Stitches organized a wager in Intergang's HQ, but they were interrupted by Vigilante, who broke into the place and challenged Stitches with the intention of killing him. Arming himself with a knife, Stitches was about to start his attack, but Vigilante was suddenly attacked by an invisible person that pushed him out of the building. Check him out in 2008's Gotham Underground, number 3. Number 1. Film Freak II. Known only as Edison, this man is the second Film Freak, a disturbed cinephile who had a strange obsession with Catwoman, and ran a late-night WUAB TV Studios operated show displaying amateur film clips made by his underlings. After obtaining footage from one of his henchmen showing Selina Kyle and Holly both wearing their Catwoman suits, he poisoned his goons, citing Alfred Hitchcock's suspicion, in order to not let him divulge the information. He later deduced the real Catwoman, Selina, was hiding in Gotham City under the pseudonym of Irina Dubrovna, the main character of Val Lewton's 1942 film Cat People. He, along with Angleman, broke into Selina's apartment and threatened her infant daughter Helena. Eventually, due to Film Freak's obsession with shots and filming, she was able to incapacitate both of them, thankfully. She also asked her friend Zatanna to wipe her identity from their minds, similar to what she had done earlier with Dr. Light, and made them confess to their crimes to the authorities. Fast forward a bit, and in his final act of villainy, we see him manage to get his hands on an atom bomb, paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, and while citing Network, announced on live TV that all Gothamites would have had their lives saved if they were able to solve a film-themed riddle. However, after shooting a movie critic that he employed to deliver the uranium for the bomb, Film Freak was finally defeated by Catwoman, who also managed to defuse the bomb. Number 10. Sportsmaster. Starting off with a pretty vanilla villain, Lawrence Crusher Croc was a very competitive sportsman who excelled at many sports, but he never played fair. Doing anything possible to win, he was eventually banned from playing any sport at a professional level, which for some reason led him to a life of crime. I don't know why. After a run-in with the Green Lantern, he supposedly dies, but it's revealed that he actually just faked his death, and that's when he became the Sportsmaster. After little success as a solo villain, Croc decided to join the Injustice Society, but after a series of crimes, he ends up in jail for a while. After serving his time, he teamed up with the Huntress and actually ended up marrying her, has a daughter, and then the three of them committed crimes together as one big happy crime family. Croc does eventually lose his life at the hands of the Human Flame following the events of Final Crisis though. With basically no superpowers other than being pretty good at sports, it's no wonder this villain has been forgotten in time. Check him out in his first appearance, All-American Comics number 85. Number 9. The Eraser. Probably the villain with the most interesting attire on this list today, Leonard Fiasco actually went to high school alongside Bruce Wayne. Due to his low grades, he actually ended up dropping out of school and turned to a life of crime as the villain Eraser. He apparently chose that name as a reminder of his constant failures during his school life, and also because he wanted to provide a special service to the criminals of Gotham City. Donning an Eraser helmet that looks exactly like the top of a pencil, and alongside his signature yellow suit, he has been seen throughout the years erasing every trace of evidence left at any crime scene, making it impossible for the police to find any clues, and he does such a good job of it that he manages to stump Batman and Robin from time to time. He is eventually caught by the dynamic duo though after they infiltrate his hideout, and not much has been seen of him since. If you're interested in his story, check him out in his first appearance in 1966, Batman number 188. Number 8. Condiment King. Now with a name like Mitchell Mayo, it makes sense that this villain's name would be the Condiment King. Once an inmate of Arkham Asylum, Mayo somehow managed to break out but was immediately subdued by Batman and Catwoman. His dream was to one day open a restaurant on Coney Island, and he actually does achieve that, stating he's turned legit and wants nothing more than to leave his life of crime behind. However, he does later don his suit once more and does his best to wreak havoc against Batman and Nightwing. Possessing no powers whatsoever, Mayo relies heavily on his gadgets, the most prominent being his condiment guns. These guns shoot a variety of sauces including ketchup, barbecue sauce, mustard, and more. However, it's kinda useless because it doesn't shoot anything at a high enough pressure to be lethal. The best it can do is create a nasty stain and just ruin your day. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance in Birds of Prey Volume 1 number 37, or in his New 52 reintroduction in 2016's Batman Volume 3 number 9. Number 7. Amygdala. Prone to fits of homicidal rage, Aaron Helsinger was put in the care of Arkham Asylum and had his amygdala cluster removed, in hopes of curing his psychotic episodes. It actually ended up doing the exact opposite though, and Aaron became even more angry than before. During his time at Arkham, Aaron became a pawn of Jeremiah Arkham and was used to attack Batman many times to try and break his spirits, but you know, it's Batman, so that didn't really happen. A short time later, Bane orchestrated a massive breakout at Arkham Asylum and all of the patients, including Amygdala, were freed, and he teamed up with the Ventriloquist to wreak some havoc on Gotham City. It didn't take long for Batman to take down Amygdala and arrest him, sending him to Blackgate Penitentiary, where he became the star member of the prison softball team. He was eventually released and actually lived in the same apartment building as Dick Grayson for a while, all until Blockbuster blew up the entire apartment complex. Check out Amygdala for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Batman, Shadow of the Bat, number 3. Number 6. Flamingo. Edward Flamingo, known professionally as the Assassin Flamingo, is truly ruthless, and I'm genuinely surprised he hasn't appeared in the media more. As an emotionless, unfeeling killer with the odd tendency to eat his victims' faces after he's killed them, Flamingo has proven to be a formidable foe as he is able to temporarily paralyze Damian Wayne, and would have killed him if it lasted longer, showing that he has no problem killing anyone whatsoever. He even nearly killed the Red Hood and would have gotten away with it if it weren't for the intervention of Dick Grayson, who had recently taken up the mantle of Batman after Bruce Wayne's death. As a master assassin, Flamingo has the know-how to use pretty much every firearm imaginable, and thanks to his iconic pink motorcycle, he is rarely caught. Described as an evil Zorro by his creator Grant Morrison, why not check him out for yourself in 2007's Batman number 666.
Number 5. Ra's al Ghul. Ra's is known for being one of Batman's most deadly foes, and one who is constantly matching and even threatens to beat Batman at times. While Batman is the master of planning with all his contingencies, Ra's has also managed to use this to his advantage, like during the Tower of Babel storyline when he hacked into Batman's files and used his perfect plans for his own machinations to neutralize the Justice League. In Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, Ra's, played by Liam Neeson, also proves how destructive he can be when it comes not just to Batman, but to all of Gotham, as Ra's al Ghul pushes the city to the brink of insanity, encouraging it to tear itself apart from his own influence and impending threats.
Number 4. Dollhouse. As the daughter of Barton Mathis, known best as the Dollmaker, Matilda Mathis commits crimes and operates under the name Dollhouse. From a young age, she was taught how to hunt and slaughter people, and usually wore a doll face that was grafted over her own when committing these crimes. Forced to go into hiding after her father's business starts to go wrong after he kidnaps Batman, she is the only one of his children to actually end up resurfacing and to carry on the family business later on. Dollhouse picks up right where her father left off, taking Gotham's more misfortunate citizens and making money off of their organs through the black market. Like Dollmaker, Matilda turns the bodies into dolls, of which she actually keeps more than a few for her own dollhouse. Making her first appearance in 2011's Detective Comics Volume 2, Number 2, check out her twisted upbringing for yourself and let me know in the comments below what you think. Number 3. Lockup. Lyle Bolton, aka Lockup, is another non-powered villain who specialized in incarceration, high-tech security weapons, and escapology. He was first seen capturing the criminals Cheraxis and Maxwell Veazey, but decided that these minor villains were too easy for him and went for the big guns in the form of Two-Face, who he successfully captured and took back to his private prison. He is eventually stopped by the police while targeting a criminal turned state evidence and is revealed to be Lyle Bolton, who was previously discharged from the police academy for being too gung-ho and dismissed from several security jobs. Later during the events of No Man's Land, having taken control of Blackgate Prison in the aftermath of the Cataclysm, he had enlisted the KG Beast and the Trigger Twins to act as the wardens for his prison and ruled with an iron fist. But Batman tolerated his presence because he required Lockup to keep captured criminals in check to prevent Gotham from being overrun with them. Lockup was kept under strict orders to treat the prisoners well, and then towards the end of the event, Batman enlisted Nightwing's help to overthrow Lockup so Blackgate could be used by the lawful authorities once again. Check him out in his first appearance in 1996's Robin Volume 2, number 24. Number 2. Professor Pig. Laszlo Valentine, aka Professor Pig, and that's P-Y-G not P-I-G, was a former agent of Spiral driven mad by his own mind-eroding drugs, and he was an enemy of Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne during their time as Batman and Robin. Characterized as a schizophrenic, Pig's mental illness explains many of his habits, one of the most prominent being his desire to make everything perfect. Now, how does he go about accomplishing this task? Well, by unleashing Dollatrons and mind-altering substances onto Gotham City. The Dollatrons are at the center of Professor Pig's story depravity, being brainwashed people who followed his every command as though they were robots. And though they act as his loyal minions, the Dollatrons are actually very much expendable and have been replaced many times. Despite his mental illness, Valentine is still a formidable foe with a mastery of basic hand-to-hand combat and a high-level proficiency with a knife, since they were once an incredible surgeon able to perform complicated surgeries, once actually switching a hand with a foot. Making their first appearance alongside Flamingo in 2007's Batman number 666, check out their origin story for yourself, or read their new 52 introduction in Batman Volume 2 number 1. And finally, number 1, the Phantasm. Created for the DC animated movie Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Andrea Beaumont treads that line between good and evil as the vigilante, the Phantasm. Her and Bruce were university sweethearts and actually had plans to get married one day. However, her father was a rich businessman who got involved with the wrong kind of people and ended up having to go into hiding, and eventually all that got him killed. This drove Andrea to take revenge on all those who were a member of the criminal gang who killed her father, especially Jack Napier, who ended up becoming the Clown Prince of Crime. To take her revenge on Chucky Soul, Buzz Bronski, and Sal Valestra, she dons the mantle of the Phantasm, a figure that kind of resembles the Grim Reaper, complete with a scythe that she wears over her right hand. Using her father's money to hone her skills, she returns to Gotham years later to complete her goal of killing all the mob bosses. However, she does not get the chance to kill the Joker as Batman ends up intervening. Years later, she does kind of redeem herself by not killing Terry McGinnis' parents after being hired to, but after causing so much bloodshed, I really think she's more on the evil side of things. If you want to see her story for yourself, check out Batman Mask of the Phantasm and let me know what you think.